So do you guys know who Jamil Zainasheff is?
Yeah, he's the author.
Yeah. So, okay. That's a great point that we'll come back to at the end. For those of you who don't know, Jamil Zainasheff is a guy who's been around for a long time in the homebrew community and then the broader beer community in general. His the thing that most of us know him for is writing the book Brewing Classic Styles, which is more or less kind of a Bible. I won't say the Bible because there's a lot of good literature out there. But yeah, David has the book. He literally wrote the book on kind of how to formulate recipes that are going to kind of be award-winning. They all actually are award-winning recipes that he kind of compiled from different sources and brewed and perfected over the years. He, in 2010 or 11, I believe, finally kind of got out of just being like a beer scientist, beer writer, kind of homebrew extraordinaire, and opened a brewery called Heretic, which is in California. It's like halfway between San Francisco and like Sacramento. So kind of that West Coast beer vibe or whatever. Very, very, very well-respected brewery. Back in the day, the first time I ever heard about it was, I think I heard about it watching maybe Where the News Broke, which was on Brewing TV, which was like a homebrew kind of YouTube show made by...
Is that on Hulu?
No, Hulu didn't even exist back then, I don't think. It was made by Chip Walton, whose current YouTube channel is Chop and Brew, shout out. But who, with Northern Brewer, back when they were with their original ownership before they sold and then resold or whatever it is now. But they did a little kind of YouTube side thing called Brewing TV, and Jamil was one of their kind of regular guests that would come on and talk. Jamil's also been like everywhere. You've seen him and heard him talk on like the Brewing Network, on the Beersmith podcast, like everywhere, literally everywhere, in addition to all his like blogs and books and whatnot. So Heretic was always like a thing that was close to the homebrewer and beer nerd's heart. They always made really good beer, very true to style, but then also like just solid out there kind of wild beers. Kind of out of the blue, on the 20th of June, put out a statement on his social media with really no preface. Just says, new owners of Heretic Brew have terminated my employment to, quote, save money, end quote. I no longer have any involvement with what they produce or how the business is run. So he just kind of blasted that out on Twitter, on Facebook, on everywhere he's on social media, and didn't really give much commentary. So that was kind of wild for those of us kind of who have been following along with kind of the beer nerd or beer industry kind of like
for over 10 years.
Darlings. Yeah, for over 10 years. We mentioned kind of the history. So that was kind of weird. I did a little bit of digging, and he did sell his stake. It sounds like in maybe like November of 2021, him and his wife, who had been kind of the owners basically since day one back in 2010 of the brewery, to a company called the Craft Beer Cooperative, who I think maybe owns them and maybe owns also Moab. That was the only things that they really advertised. So that might be their entire portfolio. But I did dig up a statement that he wrote back on homebrewtalk.com when that sale went through, and it said the following. I've had some friends ask about Heretic. Liz and I have sold all of our interest in Heretic to a group that's working on building a joint cooperative of breweries in the West. Yes, Liz and I could have continued on as financial stakeholders of Heretic, but the pandemic and my health issues have made us think that we're getting too old to have our life savings tied up in a brewery. It was a lot less stressful when we only had 5 people on the payroll, but some things will change. But Liz and I remain with the company and still work every day at making Heretic as great as we can. So that was from back when the kind of ownership transfer took place. Now they just laid him off to save money. Was
he suggesting that breweries don't make money?
Well, maybe. Yeah, that, I mean, you
Wow.
know, you're not raking it in, but you can turn a successful, you can turn a profit and run a business. But yeah, no statements from Heretic or the Craft Beer Cooperative, which is the ownership company, have been issued thus far. This podcast has not reached out for content or for comment rather.
We haven't reached out for content either.
Yeah, well, clearly. But I don't know. I don't know how much you guys know about the whole, like, how much does that resonate with you all? Kind of being of the younger, you guys probably don't even really know who Jamil Zainasheff is. Not really somebody who's important to you.
He's an author.
I've not been intimate with Jamil.
Okay.
Zainasheff.
You're on the like vous, not tu. Tie the French back in.
I'm not discounting anything he's done for beer. Obviously sounds incredibly pedigreed. Everything I'm saying right now is ignorant, just on the fact. But seeing people that were, so passionate and in love with this industry 10 years ago being exited does raise red flags about where we're headed, what's changed, and the goals of craft beer as a whole.
Yeah,
maybe.
that kind of resonates how I felt about it as well. You have any thoughts on it, Michael?
Their social media sucks. That's my thought.
So that was what I was going to say here too. So you're the PR dude. If you were the PR agency representing them when they fired kind of the guy who was their person, wouldn't you want to get ahead of that? Wouldn't you release a statement before you had an opportunity for the person to just put you on blast on social media? Say something, or maybe not, but whatever. So no additional details have really been released as far as I've been able to find. There was some online speculation about whether the parting was amicable. The phrasing of his thing makes it sound not great. And then there were also people speculating about if he had gotten paid out fully or if he was...
There are ways to go about that. So in general, PR stuff aside, in general, their social sucks. Twitter and Facebook have both gone months without really posting anything. They're pretty active on Instagram. The last thing that they posted was 5 days ago about bratwurst specials. So some news since then. If I was in their spot, they have a distillery too, by the way. So like they have some
Heretic brewery and distillery.
They have some money, like presumably. If it were me, this is not legal advice.
Nope.
This is PR advice, but also you shouldn't take it. It's all just depending on what you need to do. Figure out a way to have these conversations before they get into the public eye.
Yeah.
There should not be statements from one side and then a statement from the other. It should be a mutually agreed upon statement. In most cases, that's going to mean somebody's coming to the table. So maybe he came to the table as like, hey, I'm not happy. I need to leave. But maybe let's figure out some way to say this, and I'll stick around for the next month. Well, if we find a new replacement or whatever. The other way, if they did want to like let him go for reasons, pay him out. I mean, just make sure like, hey, we want to do this clean. Let's part mutually. Not everybody can do that.
It makes me wonder what like the business looks like on the back end, because it's like the fact that the word "save money" was in quotes is like, ugh, what's going on here? Yeah.
When things get nasty publicly, it's not really good for anybody.
It's not.
I mean, unless that's there are exceptions to that rule in certain cases, and as we've seen in the last year or so. But
are you talking about Donald Trump?
No, I'm talking about issues within the beer industry itself.
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
Are you suggesting that the bratwurst night didn't go over as well as they planned?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Actually, they had this big bratwurst night on the books.
Actually, let's play that game for a second. There are 2 comments on that bratwurst night, and I'm really glad I just brought this game up. First comment on the bratwurst post: "You're canceled, sis."
Because they fired Jamil?
That's from...
Is it from today?
John M164. That's 13 hours ago.
Okay, wow. The news is spreading.
And then 2 days ago, and this got 3 likes, guys. So, this come from Wildcard Zone. I have to say that if Jamil isn't involved with the company anymore, I have much less interest in Heretic. Shame you couldn't keep him around.
Wow.
But
So
that guy sounds like he does like bratwurst, though.
he commented
It's
on
like,
the post.
I really wish I could get some bratwurst, but like
Any engagement is good engagement. I'll wrap it up. But anyway, so Jamil hasn't really said much more. He replied to a few people who were commenting on his posts, and the general vibe was that he's kind of like ready to just kind of take more time to travel. He mentioned taking more time to write another book, which people have been dogging him about for years, and hopefully to create more media. Anybody who's gotten into brewing, seriously, I guarantee you, has read a Jamil book or listened to a podcast. He's had a couple podcasts of his own in the past that are just like amazing resources. He's one of the best beer communicators out there. There are the, kind of founders of the homebrewing or beer culture vibe, like Charlie Papazian or John Palmer. One of the next people that I would think to put on that list would be Jamil Zainasheff. So if this gets him out of a role where he was kind of, if he sold his interest in it, and if this is kind of finally a way to put a pin in that chapter and kind of move on to the next thing, then I think that's fantastic.
Much better.
Yeah. Especially with the way that they handled this. So I got 2 comments kind of from people digging that kind of illuminated 2 sides of this. I'll read them quickly, and then we'll put this segment to bed and hopefully this podcast. So from user Mashpaddle on homebrewtalk.com, not surprised. I don't mean to pile on to my past comment, but what is a conglomerate trying to brew beer in 2022 going to do with a guy who brewed beer like it was 20 years ago? Which... there are financial interests motivated by selling as much beer as they can and as fast as they can. An 80 IBU IPA just isn't a seller these days. Jamil opened Heretic 10 years too late and basically sold beer based on who he was, which hasn't been a thing for a long time. I hope he moves on to an area of the beer or homebrewing industry where he can be passionate again and balance his life against his career. He still has enough cachet to reinvent himself in the industry if he wants to, but he always seemed a little half disinterested by the time that Heretic finally opened.
Yeah, why no lactose and adjunct stouts?
He makes great beer. I mean, I haven't had a Heretic beer for a long time, but everyone I've ever had, I've always thought 10 out of 10, like amazingly good. So to that point, there's another comment from user Sweet Cell on the same thread on Homebrew Talk. IMMA, gonna disagree with you about Jamil brewing beer that is out of date, unwanted, etc. His production has been growing year over year. That doesn't happen if you brew stuff that no one wants. For us homebrewers, we think Heretic equals Jamil. For the 99+% of the country that doesn't homebrew, Heretic is just another craft brewery. It's that overwhelming majority that drives sales, not us Jamil worshippers. I completely agree that the new owners are interested in selling as much product as possible. If they decide that keeping Jamil around isn't going to further this goal, they're absolutely within their rights to dismiss him. The issue here to me is how he was dismissed. I'm sure Jay-Z, not the rapper, Jamil Zainasheff, would have liked Heretic to continue successfully into the future. So the fact that he is completely distancing himself from this former baby is very telling. My final thought, what's going to be important to the upcoming generation of beer lovers? Does this matter? Does this not matter? Why do people choose to drink the beer that they drink? Nostalgia? Is it the actual product? Is it like the social influence? Is it what beers are hot on TikTok? Any final thoughts before we sign off this steamy episode?
It matters to us, maybe, because it is something that we are ingrained in and that we're just like a part of. We have memories tied to all these places, to all these different beers. And so it just means more. That's the SEC saying it just means more.
I'm gonna like copy a TikTok trend right now and just say, like, if the beer is a 5 but the patio is good, it's a 10.
Yep.
Yeah. If the beer is a 7 and the bartender's bad, it's a 5.
Yeah.
So all these things factor in. It doesn't. There's some like stock in like old styles, etc. But if you have like the coolest venue ever, around, the experience is going to make up for what you might not appreciate about the beer, whether you like it or not.
I agree completely. So it's not really one thing. It's not a 5-star. The 5-star rating system maybe has screwed up all of our brains. It's a holistic experience to drink a beer with friends.
I think if you get 5 stars, you've achieved like 5 different levels of success.
Yeah, you're firing on all different cylinders right now. It's experiential. It's a good beer. The service didn't suck.
Yeah.
It was a nice day outside. I mean,
people around you, it was crowded, or, not crowded or cozy, whatever. It's
because the average person doesn't give a shit about who the brewer is. Like,
no,
I would actually say that, like, if you're the general population and you know who your brewer is, it's probably either a very good thing or a very, very bad thing. That's my final thought, and we can sign off the episode with this. But to me, what makes that like
brand that you really get connected to. I always preach to you guys about like the 300 raving customers. The thing about like Jamil and Heretic that maybe got them going was that he had that following. He had those 300 and more, like people that were very committed to the brand. So figuring out how your business is going to connect with 300 people or more who are just going to be there every Friday night and who are going to become the people who tell their friends about it. And, you know, the people who just say that your product is the best because X, Y, and Z. Figuring out X, Y, and Z is the hard part. But that's what we're here trying to do for Louisville Beer.
But also figure out if your business can operate on 300 raving fans or if they need 1,500 raving fans.
Sure. And that just depends on what your business is going to look like.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks for wrapping that up for a third time.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Just one last final comment.
Sure.
That was sarcasm.
Okay. Do you guys have anything you want to plug this week?